The early 2000s was such an interesting era for cartoons. But I noticed around the mid to late 2000s, things started to slow down, and animation wasn't as good as it once was. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if there was a lack of content creators, artists, if these networks were going in different directions, if they were getting cheap, if it was a combination of all of these different elements. But from 2007 to 2010, I stopped watching cartoons. I didn't care anymore. I thought, it's not good. I'm done here. And my attitude going forward into the next decade was the same. To me, it wasn't going to get any better. Thank God I was wrong. I'm gonna break it down for each of the main networks. Cartoon Network had Adventure Time and Regular Show, and that seemed to revitalize the attitude of cartoons on Cartoon Network. The old cartoons, they weren't really around anymore. So they needed a new vanguard of animated content to help carry the brand of Cartoon Network. And Finn and Jake, Mordecai and Rigby, great shows to carry that mantle. Gumball eventually arrived, Steven Universe, We Bare Bears. It was great to see that Cartoon Network hadn't completely forgotten its roots. Disney Channel had some pretty strong contenders, Gravity Falls being probably one of the strongest of them all. Star Versus, Wander Over Yonder, which was like completely snubbed by the network. Nickelodeon, these guys were the exception to the rule. They did awful this decade. They had very few shows that could actually stack up. Compared to Cartoon Network or Disney or these other channels, Nickelodeon, as the network that was the tip of the spear during the 90s and had some great shows during the early 2000s, you all dropped the ball hard this decade. Do better. There's also more shows from a variety of networks and different outlets that weren't cable channels. Streaming services were strutting their stuff, putting down big money to show that they too could contend in the realm of animation. And honestly, I see that being the main way it's going to premiere in the future. As in, cable, it's dying. TV, you're on your way out. The future of animation isn't going to be on the television set, it's going to be on the phone, the laptop, on tablets, and done through streaming sites. By the way, before I get to my top 5 list of what I personally think are the best cartoon shows from this past decade, I just want to say, no anime on my list. That can be its own separate list. I probably won't make that list, so I guess some of my favorite shows would be One Punch Man, Dr. Stone's really good, but my personal favorite is Made in Abyss. That is a fantastic show, beautiful music, probably one of my favorite settings for an anime ever. I love it, and I look forward to seeing where it goes next. All right, the list, top 5, let's do this. Number 5, Adventure Time. This show was Cartoon Network's savior. Seriously, it turned things around when Cartoon Network needed it the most. I'd say that Finn and Jake are the poster children when it comes to 2010 animation. The show has such a unique setting where it's both science fiction, fantasy, you can meld the two together. A friend of mine, Paleo, said it reminds him a lot of D&D, where you don't know what will happen. It's almost like you're rolling the dice to see what turns out. The characters are fun, they're unique, they're hilarious, they have this quirky humor, which I did not really care at first. By the way, I was late to the game with Adventure Time. It wasn't until like 2017 where I really sat down and watched the show. Up to that point, I acknowledged it was a good show because of all the folks who watched it and what it did for Cartoon Network, but personally, I thought it looked annoying and that awkward, quirky humor, so I was like kind of holding back on it. Finally watched it, I fell in love with it. I like how philosophical the show is. It has some pretty heavy themes: life, death, love, parents, growing older, stuff that older audiences can really enjoy.
Daddy, do you even love me? Well, I wish you'd show it, 'cause I wouldn't know it.
The animation is fun. You got James Baxter showing up occasionally as a horse. Fun story where it's like you got your slice of life episodes. And then there's the overall plot with Ice King, Finn, and Jake. Personally believe that Bubblegum and Marceline, spoilers, they have the most well-written gay relationship in recent animation. Like, it was a slow burn leading up to it, but they finally sealed the deal. Felt good to me, good chemistry, well done. Overall, it's just a good show. Fun, lots of rewatchability, good vibes all around, and as far as what it accomplished as a cartoon, very few shows from this past decade can claim that title. It saved Cartoon Network, it set the bar, and it cleared the way for other content creators and animators and writers and directors to take the mantle and really put their mark on this decade. Number 4, the Ducktales reboot. When I heard that they were doing a reboot of Ducktales, I thought, here we go. Just trying to cash in on nostalgia. Everybody else is doing it. Why not Ducktales? It's probably going to be bad. Whatever. I couldn't have been more wrong. Ducktales 2017, in my own opinion, is the best reboot from this past decade. The people who made it knew what made the original series so much fun and unique, with its characters, with its stories, with the adventures. But they also identified what could be improved. The nephews in the reboot all have individual personalities that feel organic and real and make them stand out. They're not just the triplets that you confuse. Huey, Dewey, and Louie, despite their similarities, have unique personalities. They also updated Webby. They updated the villains. They added a new coat of paint that, let's be real here, as much as you are blinded by nostalgia, some of these characters are dated. So if you're gonna reboot it, if you're gonna remake this stuff, then do it right. Make it worth it. Glomgold, they made him like this insane billionaire. You got this Mark Zuckerberg villain. The way they tie it in with Della Duck, the Huey, Dewey, and Louie's mom, as an overarching story, that works. Donald is a lot more present. And also, on top of it all, great voice acting, sharp writing. The jokes are super hilarious. I laugh so hard at this show.
Is this compass a sticker?
Stickers are for kids. Grown-ups call them decals.
Launchpad is, a character who I thought would be a big doofus. Physical comedy bits, just kind of the dummy, whatever. No, he's charming. He's got some heart. There's a cinematic universe element to DuckTales where you've got like Darkwing Duck. And from what I've been told, from what I've read, they're expanding on that element. That too feels organic. I keep using that word, but it's just true. I don't want to spoil the stories, but the stories are interesting. There's a good blend of slice of life. There's a good blend of the overarching, main meat of the story and how it pushes forward. I see DuckTales 2017 as probably the best show that Disney Channel had. I know, folks are saying Gravity Falls is better. Personally, I think it was not as good as DuckTales 2017. Not to say it's bad, but DuckTales 2017 took a precious property that is near and dear to these nostalgic people, myself included, from the 90s, and they did an amazing job remaking it, remolding it into something that's modern, fun, engaging, and hilarious. Again, the writing is so good in this show, and it is, without a doubt, it is the strongest element.
Do you mind doing whatever it is you're doing later? I'm trying to get us home safe, and this radar is an ant farm?
And honest to God, that's the most important part about a show, more often than not, is the writing. And the animation's great too. The colors are very nice. The settings are unique and well made. There's fluid movement. Once more, the people who made this show excelled at remaking it. They did a fantastic job. I highly recommend it. If you haven't watched it yet, you're really missing out. Go see it. Number 3, Bojack Horseman. I've never seen an animated adult show go so hard when it comes to addressing mental illness. It's a topic that we don't talk about very often when it comes to animation, but it was something that Bojack Horseman tackled, and I wasn't really expecting. When I first watched Bojack, the first season, I thought that it was just a comedy ripping on an old, washed-up celebrity, his vices, the antics him and his friends would get into, but I was wrong. Well, I wasn't wrong. It is that. But it's so much more than that as well. You're talking about depression, addictive behaviors, the pressures of life in a modern world, the existential dread of growing older, of looking back on your life and thinking that you missed it, the pressures of relationships and discussing the different elements that go into these personalities that are in relationships. Unhealthy relationships are a very big part of this show, and how sometimes we as people are okay being in unhealthy relationships because we get something out of it that prop us up. All of these different things Bojack Horseman commentates on. This is a great show when it comes to talking about just depression, anxiety, addiction, all of these serious topics that we really don't get to see too often when it comes to adult animated shows. Not to say that these shows are bad that don't address this, like The Simpsons really don't. Well, I mean, they kind of do, but not too often. You have adult animated shows that are more for comedy. Family Guy, for example. So they don't really get that deep. Now, they will talk about things that are topical, adult topics in the sense of like drugs and sex and whatnot, but Bojack Horseman approaches these topics from a serious, not too serious. That's why the comedy in Bojack Horseman helps to add some levity. But they do hit you with some very serious moments. Suicide, talking about the loss of loved ones, letting your family down. I keep just listing off different things this show talks about. But that's the reason why I do that, is because we don't get to see that too often. Or well done, for that matter.
How do you make something right when you've made it so wrong you can never go back?
I just think you have to keep moving forward.
Yeah. All my life, that's all I've ever done. And what's it gotten me?
Bojack Horseman is a show that has wonderful characters, great writing, clever in the sense of its comedy, but also in that it's engaging with its stories and that you're following these characters and seeing how far they can fall in their own unique, different journeys. I am legitimately afraid for Bojack and what he could do. I feel for these characters. I want them to be healthy, but you see them struggle and fight with their demons. And now we're entering the end game of it all, because the show is going to be over here in early 2020. And guys, I have gut rot about Bojack and what's going to happen to him. So that kind of visceral reaction doesn't happen too often when it comes to me watching stuff. So Bojack Horseman, well done, good show. You were a lot more than I ever expected, and you continue to deliver. So yeah, one of my favorite shows of this decade. And also the background humor in Bojack, fantastic. I love the subtle animal jokes. It's like a Where's Waldo kind of background like prank, where you're like looking in the background to see what kind of craziness is going on with the jokes. But yeah, Bojack, number 3, because it totally nails it when it comes to talking about adult themes, but not being just crass about it. Number 2, Primal. Primal came out on Adult Swim in 2019, so it's not even really that old. It just showed up at the 11th hour when it comes to the end of this decade. But by God almighty, did it make an impactful entrance. It was created by Genndy Tartakovsky, the same guy who did Samurai Jack. What makes Primal so worthy of its spot is that it is art. And I know, most of these shows are art, but I mean in the scope of its depth, of its beauty, of its scenes, the way they composite their shots. It is just gorgeous. And here's the best part of all. There's no dialogue. This show is all done through the expressions of the characters. The stories are told from the point of view of grunts, of seeing how these characters react to fights and the loss of loved ones and the monsters they come face to face with and the challenges of how they survive in a world that is just surrounded by death. Genndy, you are a master when it comes to storyboards and telling a story where you don't really need a script at all. In the sense of words, you don't need words in Primal. You don't. Everything you need, you can see in the eyes of these characters. And that's powerful. That is unique. You have to have so much trust and talent in your animation to deliver on that. And Primal absolutely does. It's a miniseries, so it's still like in the works. It's gonna be complete next year, hopefully. But for the episodes that were released this year, I was hooked. Dinosaurs, mammoths, giant spiders and bats and raptors and gorilla people. The universe is just so cool and violent and bloody, and they take full advantage of the adult rating so you can go full on graphic with the blood. Again, something that you would like to have in your pocket when it comes to a show with no dialogue. Oh, we can't talk about how our characters feel, so let's show them. They're pissed off, so how are you gonna convey that feeling? Rip off the head of a monkey. I really can't give it justice talking about it. If you haven't seen Primal, check it out. Visually, I think it's the best show from this decade. And it's so funny that it showed up at the very end of the decade, but still, quite deserving of its spot. Number 2, definitely earned it. Check it out. Before we get to number 1 on the list, I do want to give a shout out to some honorable mentions. This wasn't easy. There were a lot of great shows from this decade. Green Eggs and Ham was really good. It was a very beautiful show. Rick and Morty is fun. I like the setting. I like how they have infinite possibilities with a science fiction approach to it. Infinity Train, I like the serious tone of it, talking about themes of divorce with cool colors and an amazing world with the train. It's kind of sci-fi in itself. Hilda was wholesome and beautiful, just a nice, comfortable show to watch. Same with We Bare Bears. Gumball was clever. Talk about a very sharp show with its writing. Gravity Falls had a very fun story. Like that setting a lot. Same with Steven Universe. DC Superhero Girls. Not many folks talk about that show. I think it's fun. I like the characters. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. I'm very biased about that show. Came out in 2010. It wrapped up in 2019. Had a very satisfying conclusion, actually. It was very satisfying. I know that people hate on it, but just know, folks, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for me making My Little Pony videos in the early 2000s. Yes, I know, but I will not run from my past. It's the truth. So thank you, My Little Pony, for getting me to where I am today. Really appreciate you. But what about number 1? What could possibly take that spot? Well, I'll tell you. Over the Garden Wall. It's a miniseries, aired on Cartoon Network, 10 episodes. Features some amazing voice actors. Got Elijah Wood, got Christopher Lloyd, that one guy from Monty Python whose name is escaping me at the moment. I adore every single element about this show. It excels in every single category. The animation is beautiful. I love the backgrounds, the mysterious forest, and the different colors of autumn and fall. Over the Garden Wall is the best autumn-themed cartoon out there. And I know that there's not a lot of competition in that realm, but it's like they took that theme and blew it out of the water to the point where nothing will come close to it. The show has an incredibly interesting story because it stays in line with the mystery of the realm of the characters and the sense of where they are, how they're lost, they're trying to get home. The way that we're presented Wirt and how he's this indifferent teenage boy who just wants to stay straight-laced and get back home and fall back in line. How Greg is this quirky comic relief character who I thought was going to be annoying, but I absolutely love Greg. He's so endearing and wholesome.
It's a rock fact!
To this day, I've watched Over the Garden Wall probably, I'd say 20 times. I still laugh out loud with the jokes from the show. Incredibly sharp writing. Very fun characters and sharp writing, which is a personal bias of mine. If your show is sharp with its characters and its story, there's a very good chance I'm gonna be hooked. But couple that with fantastic voice acting, a beautiful setting with great animation, like I said, wonderful music. I like the riverboat kind of music going on with it. And also in the sense of the setting being this horror fantasy where there's monsters and witches. It takes place in almost like a Victorian age. How can I explain this? It seems to be in the 18th century where there's riverboats and there's still farms, and it's kind of like treading that era where technology was on the rise, but there's still some of the old world elements to that setting. And again, the monsters are great. There's witches, there's skeletons, there's frog people, there's demons. Oh my God, I can't praise this show enough. And the fact that it's a mini-series provided a path for it to be nice and tight, in the sense that it is, here's our plan, here's our story, let's get in, tell it, and get out. No episode can be wasted telling something that we don't want to tell. We gotta get to it because we got 10 episodes, let's make them count. Infinity Train did the same thing. Over the Garden Wall, in my opinion, did a better job at it. But when you have a mini-series, you have an objective, and if you're good at what you do, you can make it really work. So Over the Garden Wall, I applaud it for its beauty, for its characters, for its writing, for taking a place in my life as a tradition. I watch it every September and October. I know I can watch it whenever I want, but it's a seasonal show. It's become a part of my routine, my annual routine of life. It's that time of the year, the leaves are falling, let's watch Over the Garden Wall. And every time I watch it, I fall in love with it all over again. So yeah, that's my list for top 5 cartoons from this decade. I know it's probably going to be divisive. It's just my opinion. Tell me what you all think are your favorite shows from this past decade in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you all have to think. This is not an argument, it is a discussion. So let's share our thoughts, and you can also hit me up on Twitter. I have an account there if you want to talk to me on that site. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.